All right. Well, we better get started before Kay decides to throw me out. Because she's going to decide to throw me out, I think. Okay. So, we're moving into chapter 10. We're on to verse 16. Facing persecution is where we're starting. Kind of like I said at the beginning, I think we'll try and make it through the end of this handout, the end of chapter 10 tonight. And then next week, I think I'll have to think of something to do. Maybe make some bread or some other stuff, because next week will be our last one after 6 years of Bible study. Many of you have been through the whole journey, and we've covered some ground in the scriptures. So it seems like it would be good just to have some time to think about the ground that we've covered. Because a week after that is Shanley graduation, and then I'm going to be not leaving right away, but lots of the weekends I'm subbing in different parishes, and I'm going to spend some time at home with my parents and other things. So I think I might try and go up to the North Shore of Lake Superior for a few days, north of Duluth, and do some hiking around. I like that kind of landscape, the rocks and the waterfalls. I'm a little scared in Minnesota that there's going to be a whole bunch of bugs. So if some of you guys could pray away the bugs and the ticks, and you can take all the ticks. Okay. And
I get concerned about you on the cliffs too, because we did some hiking, so you be careful.
Oh, yeah, I won't jump off.
Okay.
You're gonna stay at Nanny Boojoo Lodge?
No, if it works, I might try and contact a parish up there and see if I can stay. I think in Two Inlets or something, there's a town up there named like that.
Two Harbors? Yeah.
Maybe that's it.
Because Two Inlets, isn't that? Oh, I think they're across. That's like
There's some place up there that's north of Duluth along the shoreline, and it's close to a bunch of the state parks and a lot of different hike things. But anyway, that is after school is over, and my brain is not that far ahead yet. So we've been moving into chapter 10. Jesus sent his apostles out on a mission. And then he has this kind of phrase. I think I might read from chapter 10 just a little bit. I'll borrow a book here for a second. He says something he says a number of rather odd things. Behold, I am sending you in the midst of wolves, so be shrewd as serpents and simple as doves. But beware of people, for they will hand you over to courts and scourge you in their synagogues, and you will be led before governors and kings for my sake as a witness before them and the pagans. When they hand you over, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say. You will be given at that moment what you are to say. So that's the first part we're going to do today. And the second part is even odder. Jesus says, do not think that I have come to bring peace upon the earth. I have come not to bring peace but the sword. For I have come to set man against his father, and daughter against her mother, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one enemies will be those of his household. So those are the two passages we're going to kind of look at. I note with a little bit of humor, it frequently talks about daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law. The sons never seem to have quite the same conflict with the in-laws. I don't know why that is. Some of you might, but it is kind of amusing to me. Okay, be shrewd as serpents. What is odd is, so Jesus is saying, he's sending these apostles out on this mission, and then he's like, yeah, it's not going to go very well. You know, you're going to go and you're going to preach, and what's going to happen to you? They're going to start persecuting you. You're going to be scourged. You're going to be thrown in jail. You're going to be attacked in the synagogues. You're going to be sort of thrown out. And in one sense, we can apply this fairly immediately to the lives of the apostles, that the persecution of Jesus is ramping up, and the opposition to him is growing significantly. And so his apostles start to share in that. It seems like some of the towns, some of the cities reject him from synagogues, and they are thrown out. Their message isn't welcomed. On the other hand, many do welcome them. We've seen this pattern even in the Gospel of Matthew, which is considered to be the most Hebrew, the most Jewish of the Gospels. And in many ways it is. But it is also, we've seen how Gentiles come to Christ. We've seen how this message is getting out to other people. And very often Jesus and his message is received better by these people who are outside than the people who are inside. So the people inside would be like the Jewish people. The people outside would be the Gentiles, or those kind of non-practicing Jews, the non-religious people. And very often it's the religious ones that are doing the persecuting, and the ones outside who you would think shouldn't receive Christ very well, and they're flocking to him. So some believe his message, some don't. Some are ready to hear it, some aren't. And this is one of the really amazing parts. Like, you have to think about what this means and how this would work, because the disciples were sent out. What did Jesus say they could take along? Basically nothing. Maybe a change of clothes. I mean, you'd think maybe they had food for a day or two, because it's hard to imagine you would go with absolutely nothing. Because you keel over dead after a few days if you really don't have anything. But they don't have much. And so saying, like, some of you are going to go to places where they're going to throw you out, it's not like you're thrown out with your credit card and you go to the local inn and, buy a room for the night. If they're not given a place, they might not have one. And sometimes I feel like we go into things we go into mission work expecting that it's going to go well, expecting, instant results. And I did this once, I prayed for a person and, this happened, or I asked my neighbor, the first time if they wanted to come to church with me, and they said yes right away, and everything was good after that, and then I didn't have to do anything awkward again. It's not like that. Sorry. And Jesus says that from the very beginning. So I think that you have to kind of game plan. You have to think about this, because it seems like when it comes to spiritual things in the missionary life, we're very ready to, we're going to get it. And then, you pick up the commentary to read, and it's kind of hard. And after a few pages, you're like, it's not worth very much. Put it away. What's on television? You call a neighbor the first time, and they say no, and you're like, oh, well, they don't want to do it, so it's over. End of mission, end of story. And Jesus actually knew that from the very beginning. He kind of warns his apostles that was going to happen. And I think, kind of like I told you when we began our studies together, there's times where reading is going to be a lot of mental work, and it's going to be hard. That kind of mental work is good for us. Some of you, as you age, want to think about keeping off dementia and some of those things, and the ways that a mind can decay over time. Well, a big part of it is actually continuing to do mental work. You should read hard things, and you should exercise your mind. It's not a cure-all. It doesn't fix everything all the time, but it helps significantly, and they have scientific studies to prove it. So people like doing Sudoku and crosswords and all kinds of things, different ways to keep your mind and those mental pathways going. That's important. And it's not going to be easy work. I remember hearing years and years ago that you could tell at the music academy the students that were going to be great musicians and the students that weren't going to do very well. Or they might be good, but they were never going to be great. And the ones that were going to be great, when they were rehearsing, would spend 80% of their time working on things that they couldn't play yet, and only 20% of their time on things that they already knew. That was the difference, is the ones that were going to be great were constantly stretching themselves for more. And the ones that could be good, but were never going to rise above, it was reversed. They would only spend about 20% of their time on things that they couldn't do already. And they spent 80% of their time on things that they could, things that they already knew. So I think there's some good encouragement in it. But one thing to note here too is that Jesus identifies himself with his apostles. This is easy to miss. What he says is, like, what they have done to me, they will do to you. What they do to me, you, they will do to me. He puts himself in the same boat as these apostles, as the ones who are the ones that he is sending them out to, the places where they are going. Like, they're in the same place that he is. And there's something beautiful about that. There's something profound to think of sharing in the lot of Christ himself, to share in his sufferings. Like I said, we get these mindset things where we're very much ready to believe that, like, this health and wealth gospel that we kind of want it to be is true. And you're going to follow Jesus, and you're going to pray about things, and you're not going to have any physical issues, and you're not going to have any financial issues, and everything's going to sort of be taken care of because now God's on your side. And I don't think that's true. And yes, like, we should be ready to pray for miracles, and we should be ready to lift up our hearts to the Lord and to seek his grace, but he doesn't fix all of our problems. He's not a magic genie God who comes out and gives you 3 wishes and then goes back in his genie lamp. It's different. The synagogues and the governors, the people, the disciples that are being sent out, the mission is going to be opposed in 2 places, both in public and in religious houses, in religion and in the public square. They're going to experience this opposition not just in one place, but in 2. It's kind of like the whole life. Everything is going to be set against you. And it's something where we should start to wonder why. Why will it be set so against them? What is going on? And that isn't an easy thing to answer. Why is it that there is so much opposition to the gospel? I wonder this myself, because I think life with the gospel, life with the commandments, is a better way to live. Like, one of the greatest treasures that God has given us is a way of living that is actually the key to human happiness. That knowing him and loving him and serving him and admitting your faults and admitting your failures and receiving forgiveness, like, this whole thing is a beautiful life. It's a beautiful gift. We live in a world today that's easy to criticize because of how broken it is, and it's broken in many different ways. It's broken morally, and it's broken mentally, and you see the breakdown in marriage and family. But most of all, I would say you see the breakdown in things like the drug use and the searching for answers that people are going on. Whether it's searching for answers in the world of health and medicine and the things that push people again and again to try all these wacky diets and do all these things because it's going to provide the cure to their problems. And the number of people that suffer with insomnia and depression and anxiety and loneliness. And it's like you can go down the list, and what you see in our world today is a way of life and a way of living that just isn't working. The machine is breaking down. And so to me, it's like, well, the gospel is great. Like, this is the best news ever. It's something that can bring real hope and healing. And then Jesus says, yeah, but it's not going to work. It's like, what do you mean it's not going to work? Like, Lord, why would you call us to a mission that's not going to work?
I just had a thought as you were speaking, Father. I had read an article recently, and it was like over in Europe. Like, one of the places, I guess, where they have assisted suicide is, like, okay or whatever. But there was a lady that her son choked and she couldn't save him. And she said she'd tried all different kinds of pills, and none of the pills worked to relieve her pain and suffering. So she's decided that, and it was like, you can take as many pills as you want, but it won't. And I'm just like, oh my God, so it's just like, oh
yeah.
my gosh. But
yeah.
They were, so it's kind of like,
In Canada last year, 5% of their deaths were assisted suicide. So 1 in 20. I don't think Canada allows euthanasia technically. I think it has to be physician-assisted suicide, so the person has to do it themselves. Like the doctors can't kill them, kind of thing. I don't know, and they think that makes an ethical difference. And it's not so much in the Christian world, but you're right. Like when you lose hope, when you don't have an understanding, when suffering is meaningless, absolutely the world looks really bad. But that
Practice that goes awry further.
Oh yeah, yep. But what I would say is, like, that's part of the beauty of the Christian message too, that your suffering isn't meaningless. That your suffering is part of the redemption of the world, that your suffering can bring grace and hope and mercy to people who are desperately in need of it, that your suffering ultimately can be for your own salvation. And that this world, as long and as treacherous as it feels and the difficulties that you face, you know, compared to eternity, it's just a blink of an eye. I love that verse from Amazing Grace. It's one of the traditional last ones. When we've been there 10,000 years, you know, bright shining as the sun. And it's something to think about, because it's like, man, sometimes we complain about the long, hard years or the long, hard winters. What about 10,000 years? What about 10 million years or 10 billion years? Like, I don't know. I feel like, you know, if we could trust people's near-death experiences and some of the visions of heaven that people have had, they describe like life being over in such a fast blink of an eye that you wonder why you ever thought it was more than a blink of an eye. So I think there's some goodness waiting for us there. But it is just odd. Like, it should be jarring to us. It kind of rocks the boat, because I feel like I expect Jesus to say, you know, you go on mission and people encounter salvation and it's beautiful and it's powerful and it changes hearts and it's going to be good. And he says it's going to be bad. And it's going to divide families, and it's going to divide parents and children, and it's going to divide the mothers-in-law and the daughters and the fathers and the sons. Like, he comes not to bring peace but division. And like I said, I think that should bother you. Why? Lord, you're supposed to be the Prince of Peace, and you say you're going to cause a war. But I think part of what we've touched on before in other places is that evil doesn't abide the good. It's not light and darkness that are just sort of opposites of each other, and you know, you coexist, you have some good and you have some bad. The reality is the bad tries to kill the good. And this plays out in 1,000 different ways. You can see it in the drug wars that spill over into the civilian areas, and people that are shot on the side of the road, or in schools, or the damage, you know, that's caused. You can see it in the destruction of churches in places like Nigeria and India. I mean, you can see it, you can feel the pressure here in the United States sometimes. I mean, we have some strong constitutional protection so far, but there's a concerted effort to wear away some of those, to push back against churches. And, you know, there's definitely fights that are in our future here in the United States. And I know that it pains some of you because you have children that don't practice the faith anymore. But again, it's just kind of odd, because it's like, that's actually what Jesus says. These are his words. They're not mine. He says it's not going to work like you want it to. And he says not everyone is going to receive the message. And that part I wonder about, like, why is it so hard to receive the message? I've been pondering a lot lately why it is so hard for people to admit that they need help and go to counseling. You know, like, I come from a family where that was very much looked down upon, either directly or indirectly, and things that my parents said and did, and the way that they work. You know, they'll have these things that they say, well, like, I just didn't think you would need that. I didn't think it was so bad. And it's like, in a way, it's odd, because I've been in counseling for years and I am actually rather fond of it. I have found it to be a great gift, and I love exploring things. And it's like, what is so scary about this? I mean, you sit and talk to someone and they have some training, and helping you explore your experience and, avoid negative self-talk and some of the pitfalls. And I know some of you have experienced that, where it's like bad thoughts and loneliness and anxiety has this kind of gravity and sucks people in. And then you get disappointed, or you're kind of upset, or you get lazy and you waste a day, and then you get more disappointed, and all of this stuff builds. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like working on ways out of that is actually a pretty good thing. And yet I would suspect that for many people, like, the first most terrifying thing they could do is stand up and give a public speech. And that's another one that doesn't make sense to me, because I do it all the time. And, now I feel like people have even less arguments, because now, like, I did a whole course on the 10 Commandments with sophomores, and we talked about everything under the sun when it comes to human sexuality. There's none of them that can go home and claim that they haven't had a sex talk, because they got it at school in spades. And we charged into things where parents, feared to tread. And I survived. I'm still alive and breathing, at least as far as I know. So there's, it feels like people should have less of an argument, because it's like, man, you want to be scared. Like, it's giving a public speech about a topic that you don't like to a group that doesn't want to hear it, about the most sensitive topics you can. How many more buttons would you like to push? But it's like Jesus talks about the persecution, and you even think about the view on human sexuality that animates how the church works, and the ways it's so bizarre to me. I just cannot wrap my head around why this transgender thing has kind of exploded into our culture. Like, it didn't exist when I was in school, and that wasn't that long ago. I mean, it certainly didn't exist in your generation, but like it just wasn't there, even in a public school. I mean, I didn't go to, a Catholic school where talking about the 10 Commandments and spending time in prayer. That would have been foreign ground, and it didn't exist. It wasn't there. And for these kids today, even in a Catholic school, it is. And for me, that's just kind of sad. It's like, I don't know what to tell you. It's like all of society went crazy, and I don't know what happened to it. Like, I don't know why it became an argument. I don't know why this became a thing. Like, it's bizarre. And, I say that even just from the perspective of trying to understand what happened, much less address it. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know how it did it in 20 years, but it did. So, the disciples will go out, they'll be hated for their lifestyle, the proclamation of the truth, the darkness will resist it. Darn it, we got to move on. That's one of the things I don't like, is there's so many things to talk about. You think, man, there isn't very much today, and then that's always the worst thought. You will not finish the towns until the kingdom of God comes. If you can tell me what on earth that means, you should have a doctorate in Scripture. Because, like, it just doesn't seem to make sense. They certainly didn't go to all the towns of Israel. Does Jesus mean like they'll go to all the towns that he's going to go to? Does he mean, it certainly can't be all the towns in the world, because that didn't happen. And it talks about, like, before, I think it says, like, before the coming of the Son of Man in glory. It's like, well, what's that? Is that the second coming? Is that the ascension? Is that... So there's just a mystery here. It could be that Jesus is speaking of a mission for the rest of time. That's one possibility, that this is until the second coming, that Christians will go out and that we're mandated to go out. It could be that he is talking about the towns in Israel that he's intending to visit, and that the coming in glory he references is when he dies on the cross. It's another possibility. The Gospel of John talks about his coming in glory, his hour of glory being revealed at his death. And that's upside down, and that doesn't seem to work either. So I think this is good, because you guys never believe me when I tell you that there's scripture verses that puzzle me, and that I don't just have an answer to, or the commentators like that write these kind of commentaries, they don't have an answer to it either. It's like all of the ways that we try to solve the difficulty with this verse bring up other difficulties and cause other problems. And there's not just a clean way to do it. About the only person that I think can tell you what it means is Jesus himself, and so you better ask him.
I got a thought, but it's not an answer. When he sent people out, they weren't supposed to stay there forever. They were supposed to bring people, just like missionaries today, they've been taught, you bring the local culture in to further the gospel. You don't stay there and push it.
Yeah, to bring the local culture in. You're not wrong. But it is kind of funny that I think Jesus tells them to stay until they're sort of thrown out. Like, stay until they show you the door. And if you've had guests like this, that's actually a funny thing to say. Like, where you're like, okay, it's time for you to leave now. Like, here, I'll help you pack your stuff.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the length of what's the average length of a priest being in a church?
The average length, I was like, what's the average length of a priest? And I was like, I don't know. Priests with our current bishop and our previous bishop, parochial vicars are assigned at the whim of the bishop, so they can be moved technically whenever he wants to. Pastors are usually given a term of 6 years that can be renewed once. So 6 years and then 12 years. With Bishop Fulda, almost everyone who doesn't want to move after 6 years will stay another 6 years. But, then there's times where that's not the case. So
I thought they were moved on so that some of these problems didn't happen.
no, there's differing theories. We got to keep moving because we still have a lot to get through. Buckle up. Do not be afraid. Be afraid of the one who can kill the soul, not the body. That, I think, is good advice. Do not be afraid. That's definitely a drumbeat. One of my favorite lines in the Bible. You are worth many sparrows. It's like, is that supposed to be a compliment? Like, do not worry about your life. You're worth many sparrows. Like, oh. Well, what do you mean, Jesus? I think in one of the places he talks about like the flowers of the field and how they're clothed in this beauty and their splendor, and you cannot add one day to your life with worry. At least that's a similar passage in some of the other Gospels, even if it's not at this spot in Matthew. But I just find that line to be so like, oh, I don't know, Lord, is this like a nice thing to say to someone? Or a mean thing to say to someone? You're worth many sparrows. He talks about proclaiming the message on the housetops. This is kind of a sign that what he's talking about is not a secret knowledge for a select few. Sometimes Christianity can feel like that, and Jesus says, no, he rejects that pathway. It's not a hidden path of knowledge for a few of the holy ones. It's something for everyone, like the truth is available for everyone. Now, Christians certainly have taken that not to mean that you should tell everyone everything all the time. Like, there's things for people who are beginning in the faith that just aren't the right thing to start with usually. You start with things like Jesus suffered and died for your sins. You can choose to follow him. You can become his disciple. You can receive the sacraments. Like, usually that's where you start. Not quite as much with like the doctrine of purgatory or saints and their intercession or the Holy Spirit and the indwelling of God in our hearts, because it's like until you have some of the other pieces, until you have some of the foundation stones, some of the more advanced is the word that comes to mind, but I don't want it to have quite the same feeling that it does. But anyway, some of the more advanced things, if you don't have the foundation pieces in place, those things sound really strange. Jesus has, in one of his trials, he has this quote about they will all be taught by God. And so Jesus says, well, if the psalm calls them gods who are teaching, why do you get mad at me when I claim to be the Son of God? Like, you know, there's more of an inside joke there than it feels at first. So, proclaiming on the housetops that the seed is meant to be scattered widely, and it's not for the missionaries to decide like that the seed isn't to be sown. It's to be spread widely. It's to be shared. It's to be offered to the world. Whether people receive it and respond and follow it or not is up to them. But it's certainly to be offered to the world. Be careful of expectations. This, I would argue, is so fantastically important that it's almost bizarre. Expectations are huge. Huge, huge, huge. Lots of you can get mad as a hornet, just like I do, when you drive in your car on your way and you're delayed. Especially when it's like stupid people who like sit through green lights and try to go through red ones or pull out in front of you and do all of these things that bother you. And at the end of the day, this is a convicting part. You might get there 30 seconds later because of that. And yet you're ready to turn into a fire-breathing dragon with scales and melt down half of the city for 30 seconds. Like, be careful of your expectations. One of the great authors that I like is Brene Brown, and she talks about this. She noticed that when she and her husband were gone, like the weekends that they were both home together with their 2 kids were the most stressful. And they would always be at it, and they'd always be fighting. And if the other one was gone, it would go much better. And after months of this and dialogue and difficulty and frustration, she finally, either he said to her or she said to him, you know, I like you and I want you to be around. Why are weekends so hard when you're here? And his answer was enlightening. He said, well, when you're gone, I have to completely drop my expectations of getting anything done, and I just take care of the kids. And what they began to realize is a huge part of their conflict with each other when they were both home for a weekend was because they had expectations of how much they were going to get done. And they didn't get their expectations fulfilled, and then they got frustrated, and that frustration boiled over with each other. I thought there was great wisdom in that because it's so true. It's like, you know, if you think it's going to take you 20 minutes to make a batch of cookies and it takes you 2 hours, you're not usually a pleasant person to talk to on the phone for a while. If you think that the lawn needs to be done and, you know, you would go out and do it and then have to pick up a bunch of sticks first, it might only take 10 minutes, but those are a long 10 minutes. So, I think that it's a great lesson. I would encourage you to take it to heart. Be careful with expectations because it can really make a difference. If you sit down to prayer expecting God to bowl you over every time and your heart to be on fire, you're going to walk away disappointed almost every time because He doesn't do that. In the same way, if you have the expectation, you know, you go there and it's like, well, no one's ever going to talk to me and it's always going to be bad, that too